You're listening to the Forest School Podcast. Delicious waffle chat about education, nature connection, child development, community building, and lots more. Hosted by Lewis Ames and Wem Sutherland. There's a daffodil in my garden and it wasn't open this morning, but now it is.
It feels like spring. I've just been chasing my chickens around the garden in the sunshine. It's been lovely. My dog's been helping. It's been very good. That sounds horrible. It was fun. Listeners, we've got such a juicy episode today. I loved it.
Yeah.
Talking to practitioner Rachel Summers about all kinds of interesting things. But before we talked about, what did we talk about? We talked about
different
spirituality in Forest School,
about authorities and hierarchies and leading people, and we talked about
nature awareness and helping other people to notice that
she was the person that did the chalk in lockdown and labelled all the trees and
then we talked about graveyards and death.
Look. If you listen to this episode through the first half, I think you'll be able to hear I am a little bit timid. I am a little bit on the back foot. There's some like reverence that I'm not sure where to put. And then
because you're talking to a vicar.
Because I'm talking to a vicar, and as we go through, and I remembered that it's Rachel, and I know Rachel, and Rachel's lovely, and
she's a Forest School person,
and she's a Forest School person, and Rachel really came in with some. I don't want to spoil.
Deacon is the word. Deacon is the word.
Some brilliant stuff comes out sort of 2/3 of the way through. We really relax into it and get in, and it's like, not that the first half isn't great. It's just very different in tone, becomes a little bit more silly. Not that people would expect that from us.
Oh, of course not.
Guys, Wem, this next week, we're putting out our second episode of the Patreon one. It's the secret student that you did for me. It's our secret student who might be somebody with like scraggly hair and who likes to follow the rules and who has 2 friends that at school and they all do magic. So that one's coming up for listeners. And I want to say as well, if you've got your questions, we've got some questions coming in for the pedagogy surgery. Oh, excuse me.
While Lewis is coughing, I'll explain what that is. It's like any kind of moment of teaching, or it could be Forest School practice, it could be education practice, it could be parenting practice, it could be any interaction with children or groups or community, and you've just got a little bit of a niggle and you think, not sure, I want another point of view on this, and you want us to pull it to bits, chew it up, digest it, and then vomit it back into your ears. Then,
and it's anonymous. On the forestschoolpodcast.com, there's an anonymous bit where you can drop it off. So if you want to throw in stuff about people you work with or about stuff that you're like, I can't really get into this at work because it's all too messy and people know each other, and just throw it to us and we'll chew it out objectively.
Or it could be like an ethos thing. Like, what do you guys think about this? Because I'm not sure. Like a little debatey thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be about your own practice. It could be, something philosophical.
Nuts. We've got our level 3 training coming up. It's now the time of the year where we go, it's happening in September, which means we need to start the wheels turning now because such is the way of the world. We're doing 6 Mondays in September and then 4 in the following spring, and that puts together like 10 days of level 3 training down in Devon. It's super, super lush. We have had people who are on our course who've been chatting to people on other courses who've been going, oh my God, I was talking to someone on another course and they were like, I can't believe how shallow my course is. And the course they were doing with us, and they were like, oh, it's so deep. You guys are just going into all the nitty gritty stuff. And we're like, yeah, we do. It's 10 days. 10 days of chatting and waffling and really getting into the stuff that we are and playing, just crafting and really, we love it, right? You may have noticed. So
join us.
We are not doing that by whole half. So if you want to do that training, you can go to childrenoftheforest.com and there's hyphens in between all those words. Or you can Google Children of the Forest Level 3 training and we'll come up. When we have been getting some reviews, and I'm so sorry I haven't pulled them out yet. But we have been getting more rating and reviewing on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Really appreciate everybody that's going and doing that. If you're on a podcast player now, there might even be a little button just where you can just open your phone now and just go and click it and just go, oh, yeah, click that many stars. It doesn't cost you anything.
It's a review. Yeah.
Really, really helps us. So thank you so much for everybody that has done all of that. But without further ado, I think we should get into this chat with Rachel.
Yeah, let's do it.
Everybody, we're here. Rachel's here.
Oh, blimey. Someone's trying to call someone. They're trying to call me. Oh, for goodness sakes. Right, we're not here. Right, I'm just going to message my husband and say, please leave me alone. I'm trying to do audio recording. Right, sorry, guys. Right, he's gone.
How rude was that text you just sent? Because it was very short.
Got a collar on. It's very polite, obviously. How could you possibly think it might be anything else?
Guys, we're here. Rachel's here. Rachel, I am trying to work out how long we have known each other. I think I have known you digitally for like 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, I reckon.
Yeah.
And then we've probably...
we've been talking... We've
substantially pre-COVID, as in I didn't just meet you and then lockdown, so I definitely knew you well enough before.
Yeah, and we've been talking about doing this podcast for ages, haven't we? Absolutely ages. Yeah. So it's great to be with you finally.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we're here to chat about, well, the specific way in which you do forest school and the things that you get up to, which people who are looking at this on a video, well, might have a clue into what it is. But for people that don't know you, could you tell us a bit about like your background, what you do, and like how you've ended up what you're doing now?
This is where I could really confuse all the people who are just on audio, isn't it? I could say something, I could like talk about what I'm wearing or what I'm doing that's going to be completely at odds with what people who are watching can see, and then I'm really confused. Shall I do that or shall I be good?
Up to you, mate. Up to you. Give us a yarn first and then go, only joking. It's actually this.
No one will ever know if it was true or not. So I am, well, kind of a forest vicar. I'm based in Walthamstow, East London. And so if you were able to see me, you would see that I've got a dog collar on. So I am actually a proper vicar and not a renter stripper vicar. Actually, I haven't been a renter stripper yet, but let's not rule it out.
Lewis has lost it. We're like 1 minute into the podcast. Oh my God.
I come from kind of a forest school background for the past 10 years. I've been forest school practitioner, done a bit of training, done a bit of forest school with all kinds of different groups of people. Also while exploring my vocation to ordained ministry in the Church of England and what that looks like as a person who belongs in the woods, and whether there's a place for me somehow in that intersection between the two. So I suppose that's kind of where I am. I'm kind of, when people say to me from the church, kind of, where are you based? I say, I'm based at St. Peter's in the Forest, which is actually the church I am at. It's called In the Forest, which is rather perfect.
Wow.
So St. Peter's in the Forest on one side of the 406 and St. Mary's Woodford on the other. If you know London, you'll know the 406 probably is just a bunch of numbers for all of you guys. But it's a big road that goes around London. It's not the M25. And then I'm based in the woodland in between them. So the space in between, it's the spaces in between those crossover bits, which are the bits that get me excited anyway.
And is it a shared site between those sites? Is the woodland shared?
So both those churches kind of sit within Epping Forest. So Epping Forest is massive, great forest that stretches down like fingers down into East London. So it goes down further than we are in Walthamstow, right down kind of down through Leytonstone, Wanstead, Woodford, all of that bit. So St. Peter's in the Forest is surrounded, literally, it's in a forest glade. And then if I walk through the forest and cross the motorway, then I'm in the other parish. So I'm kind of straddling the two.
Wow. And what does your space look like? Does it, if you happened upon it, would you say, oh, this is a recognisable forest school site? Or would you look at it and go, oh, yeah, this is an outdoor church? Or is it somewhere in between? What's it like?
So, the church was built as a chapel of ease to St Mary's Walthamstow, not the St Mary's I'm at, about 150 years ago. So it's kind of slightly at the back end of town. It feels a little bit, I always say to people, it's a little bit like the side of town that people are facing away from. So you're kind of looking down towards London, your gaze gets drawn down towards centre of Walthamstow, centre of London itself. And then here we are kind of, if you're talking about highways and byways, we're definitely where the byways are. We're those kind of paths that you're not sure if they're people or badgers, and we're kind of that end of town, the bits that's stuck behind. So it's got a big main road that goes down to the hospital on one side, so it's not quiet, it's full of sirens, but it is set within the forest, and within the forest it's got this churchyard. Within the churchyard it's got this Victorian church. About 2 years ago they had lottery funding and had a big church refit, and as part of that they were really leaning into being a church in the forest, with it being part of their name, and wanting to kind of be able to utilise the church to gift people access to the forest. So it's set up partly kind of allow community groups a little bit more of a toehold into where the forest is, because Epping Forest it's useful to walk through, but because of it being owned by Corporation of London, it limits how much you can hang around and do stuff there. So if you get permission to use Corporation of London sites, for example, for Forest School, which I've used in the past in different places, they will give you permission, but you can't have permission for a fire, for example. But you also aren't allowed to put things up on the trees. You're not allowed to run an activity underneath a tree. So
wow.
It's fairly
hang on.
About use.
How do you be in a forest and not do an activity under a tree? How does that work?
Well, there you are. That's the conundrum, Lewis.
That sounds like a legal loophole.
So here we have this little churchyard, little jewel of a churchyard sitting in the middle, and as part of the plans for it, the architect built in a fire pit outside the church as well. So we've got this permanent fire pit outside the church, and I think what my role has been finding a place for the fire pit within the life of the community, but also within the life of the church, and trying to tie those two things together.
Does your practice, when you're running sessions, I'm trying to imagine how they would work. Are you like, this whole thing is outside by the fire pit and then the next session is wholly inside in the building? Or do you ever like start in one place and move to the other, or go from one to one? What are you fixed once you're at the fire pit or in the church?
Generally, I'm fixed. So if I'm doing stuff in the church, then it's normally mostly church-based, looks fairly like a traditional service. The other week, we have a creative service once a month, and the other week we were doing candle mass, and I made everyone come outside. We made those earth candles, you dig in the ground and you melt the candle wax over the fire and pour it in. So you
sent us a picture. You were in white clothes, and I was very impressed.
Stuff in my happy place, pouring wax into the ground. So yeah, there's porosity to it. I run Forest School sessions with families. I do baby club and then kind of toddler preschool club on a Friday morning, which I was running before ordination out of this space, and that's continued much as it was. And I suppose there is a bit of porosity the other way around, in that it's useful that we've got a building sometimes, because it's useful for like accessing toilets and things like that. But also it's just nice being able to have the space kind of, with Forest School, so much of it hangs around that kind of seasonal, the wheel of the year turning. And actually, because the church in this place was so strongly influenced by seasonality, actually often the festivals that are happening in the church.
So just to clarify then, you said you were doing toddler and baby groups on a Friday. Is that within that churchyard forest setting, or is that in a different woodland?
Yes, so it's within the churchyard. So up until I started this bit, it wasn't the only space I was using. So I was doing lots of Forest School in lots of different places. And I've kind of pulled out of that and got other people running some of it, and some of it's just had to drop because lack of being able to run all the things in the world. But now I'm kind of doing more things out of the churchyard with kind of as part of the church mission, I suppose.
Yeah. And do you find that people are, because the way you described sort of your journey to where you are now was part of, you saying that you're like an outdoorsy person and you wanted that element of the church in your life, but outdoors. And do you think that kind of, I'm thinking that probably describes actually quite a few people, that people might be drawn to both of those things, or it makes almost church more accessible to some people who are much happier outside. Do you find that's the case? Do you find you've got a lot of people who are very pleased to be in that environment?
I think I'm not trying to do a resell or a kind of let's squeeze something to make it palatable. But I do think there is something in all of us that really kind of leans toward, yearns for a sense of connection with something bigger than ourselves, whatever that looks like. And that's something that I think is common to people across Forest School. Most people I talk to, often one of the reasons that they've been drawn outside, working outside, is that kind of sense of being caught up in something that's bigger than yourself, caught up in the world, in the universe, seeing how the seasons change and the trees and their lifespan being longer than ours, and little tiny bugs and their lifespan being shorter than ours, and just kind of finding your place in the world. And so I suppose it's kind of coming out of my own walk anyway, of knowing that I find that kind of peace and connection when I'm outside, knowing that that's something that other people have. When you talk about kind of a time when you felt that sense of peace, connection, people won't often say I was sitting in a service, but they would say I was up in a mountain, or I saw a sunrise, or a bee came and sat on my hand and I noticed how fuzzy it was. So it's about, I suppose, helping people to notice those points and use those points almost as waymarkers, rather than kind of just them getting lost in that wash of busyness and busy life around us, helping people to drill down and find that stillness and that peace. And the church has got 2,000 years of helping people do that. It's had people who've been doing that as a job, kind of professionally, I suppose, but for 2,000 years of people who've got all this wisdom about what maybe you might call mindfulness, of being kind of at one with things, noticing the tiny things, kind of cherishing the stuff that maybe is sometimes seen as useless, sometimes seen as pointless rubbish, or things that are seen as kind of too inane, or like the powerless things of the world. Whether or not the church has always used that well, it's not up for debate. It's true, it hasn't always used that well, but nevertheless, we've got these kind of years and years of wisdom. So if I can offer that wisdom to people, to say, well, here's some things that people have done in the past, which has helped them to explore this. Take out of it what you need, use it however you need in your own walk to find peace, to find a sense of being one with the universe.
And that's very much a Forest School approach, isn't it? You know, you could apply all of that you've just said there to any of the activities or offerings or routines and rituals that we do as part of a Forest School session. It's like, you know, some of this you might resonate with you, some of it might not, and that's completely fine. And here are just some ideas that might make you feel a sense of well-being and community and learning about, you know, the world and yourself.
Hi listeners, before we continue with the rest of today's episode, I wanted to take a moment to give a big shout out to our sponsor Skillshare. Skillshare is the ultimate platform for learning new skills and honing your craft, with thousands of online classes taught by experts in their various fields. Guess what? As a token of appreciation to our amazing listeners, Skillshare is offering an exclusive deal. Simply click on the link in the podcast show notes and you'll get a fantastic 30% discount on your Skillshare membership. That's right, 30%. So whether you're interested in photography, creative writing, or mastering new software, Skillshare has got you covered. Don't miss out on this incredible opportunity to enhance your skills and unleash your creativity. Thank you, Skillshare, for supporting our show and helping us provide valuable waffle chats to our listeners. Now let's get back to the rest of today's episode.
I was thinking while you were talking about how in the Forest School Principles, there is that word about the spiritual in the Forest School Principles. And I remember that, Lewis, I think I'm right in kind of including you in that as well. At the very beginning of our Forest School journey, that was the element of the principles that we not struggled with, but we had
sometimes feels a bit uncomfortable. And when
I've done
it's something,
like, what does that mean? You know,
stumble upon it sometimes, don't you? You think, I'm not quite sure what this means or how I can make it authentic for me.
Yes, and whether that is, you know, it's not a word that we use very often in everyday life. You know,
I think as teachers, you get used to all the other bits that are in the principles. Coming from a teaching background, if you talk about facilitating risk, okay, well, I've had training in risk. If you talk about facilitating, opportunities for emotional growth, I've done that. I've had training. I've done whatever else. Like, even when I was teaching, the PHSE curriculum was like, here is the book. You do a page a day. Do not go off script. Do not answer any questions that you're not qualified for. The school is not liable for anything you say. You know, like, that's the level that I definitely started this journey on. Like, you see spiritual, and I always go, nope, that's not.
In a way, do you not feel that spiritual, the kind of allowing learners to explore spirituality, feels like almost the most risky thing out of the things that we're asking them to do if we're playing around with risk? Because it's deep stuff, isn't it? It's deep stuff about kind of what makes you human and not a slug, and kind of things that actually matter, and because they matter, they're often hugely contentious.
That's what I was going to say. The contentious bit is, compared to lots of other things that you might encourage people to explore, nobody's upset if someone thinks the slug is a boy and someone thinks the slug is a girl. That lands very differently to someone discussing spirituality and what they believe in. Like, and that's one of those things, isn't it? Where, like, I think you're definitely right there, Rachel, to say that is the riskiest thing, and probably, as I reflect now, something that I'm still slightly shying away from. If it came up in a conversation, you know, between learners, I might feel more comfortable to hold it. If it came up between adults, let's say a toddler group, I would probably recuse myself in hopefully a very funny way quite quickly. But I would make a light-hearted quip and move away.
Are you thinking then, Lewis, about like a definitely, obviously religious element to the spiritual there? Are those the kind of discussions and situations that you're thinking of? Because I think for me, when I was trying to engage with the principles and going, well, what does that actually mean? Like, I haven't, because we don't talk about it in everyday life. It's not something that comes up very often. Naturally, in conversation, we don't tend to go, oh, yeah, to our friend, I had a really spiritual moment today. But, you know, it's just not part of everyday normal conversation. Although, for me, it is becoming more so the more I gel with new friends and want to explore that part of my life. But, and I think, you know, you saying about accessing that, you know, feeling at home in the world of things and nature and those and that actually gaining an understanding for me that a spiritual moment for a participant at Forest School might be a moment of complete awe and wonder at watching a centipede, or it might be just that moment of when the mixture of the bird song at this exact moment combined with the light through the leaves at this exact moment combined with the fact that I've just been hanging out with a friend and we had an amazing time, and I have that moment of just like,
it creates something bigger than all the parts.
Exactly. And that doesn't have to be religious, in inverted commas, in any way, but it is definitely a spiritual feeling which we don't have the opportunity to access that often in our lives. But Forest School is one place where that has got more likelihood to be able to happen, because so many of the conditions might be, not for everybody, but might be right for people to experience those moments.
I think you're right. I think that it becomes a kind of magical mixing pot in which it's easy for it to grow out of. And I think that can kind of help you exercise your muscles, your spirituality muscles, so that as you are in different situations, somehow it's easier to settle, to sit inside of, because standing in the queue at Primark is not the place that you're going to find a spiritual experience. But maybe it's a time that you most need to. And maybe a bit like, when you go mudlarking down at the Thames, well, you don't, 'cause you live far, far away from London. But if one was to live in London and go mudlarking down on the Thames, you go down on the beach, and at first it just looks like a load of nothing. And then they talk about getting your eye in, and you can notice and then start to pick out these things which are treasures. And obviously, are they really treasures? Are they worth money? No, they're not worth money at all, but they're treasures because of how they connect with you, because maybe this pipe stem was last put in someone's actual mouth maybe 200, 300 years ago. And since then, it's not touched any other people. And that kind of connection between you and the object and the other person in the past is something bigger than just the little bit of pottery itself. And I think it's about that kind of getting your eye in. So maybe the more we can give people not just the experiences of kind of spiritual experiences in Forest School, with the kind of, I often talk when I talk to churches about why it's important, about kind of when you're looking at a slug, and everyone goes, because it's disgusting. And then you hold it, and as you hold the slug and you kind of talk about the slug and you draw attention to the slug, suddenly kind of the group coalesces around you, doesn't it? And maybe you'll notice how kind of the sunlight sparkles on its damp little body, and you might notice its little breathing hole opening and closing. You might notice the little slug mites walking around on the outside of it. And suddenly you notice this wonder in something that you hadn't maybe noticed before. And I think the more you can give people experiences like that, then they're more likely they are to spot the kind of weeds growing out of the pavement, or to spot the clouds, or goodness me, to spot other people being humans and breathing in the queue in Primark, and just the wonder that there we all are as people living in the world. And then maybe even we might manage to queue in Primark without going crazy. You never know.
Oh, I love that.
So, because as we're talking about all this stuff and this like wonder, these like moments of, we're talking about like moments of spirituality, and I think I'm reflecting that I, as well as feeling slightly shaky about them, I would say they are the part of the facilitation that I feel I have the least control over. I think I would put them in a box of like, if they happen, they happen. But I don't think about like,
you can't push it.
You can't push it, but I also don't think I even consider like, oh, this might be a box in which spirituality happens when I'm planning the session. I was wondering, I don't know, Rachel, if you do any like non-church Forest School, but whether you think that you might have like more of a focus on that, or you try it. I'm not really explaining myself well. Do you think you try and facilitate spiritual moments more than the average outdoor leader might, or do you think
that's
you are
very
also
hard to tell, because obviously I've only ever lived in my body and in my brain.
That's why I was waffling.
Yes, so Friday mornings it's not a church Forest School any more than churches run toddler clubs. Essentially, it's our church offering of toddler club, but here it is as Forest School, because it's a useful and important thing that a church can offer to the community. In fact, getting slightly sidetracked, the church, not the Church of England, but the churches worldwide came up with what mission means. And there are 5 different things in mission. And some of them are things that you might think of as mission from a church, of like people going out and telling people about how to become Christians. But there's also, it was agreed by everybody, one of them is about care for the world, care for the environment, helping people to love and understand and become part of it. So actually, kind of, if I do, and I do sometimes come across people within churches who are a little bit twitchy about what I'm doing, but they shouldn't be, because there it is in black and white. It's actually kind of, this is mission because it's important for people. And actually, if as a Christian, I believe that there is a God who created a universe and us as part of it, then surely it's important for me to be able to help other people to notice that universe. Anyway, that was by the by. I can't even remember what your question was. Oh yeah, about my Friday morning. So my Friday morning sessions are just ordinary Forest School sessions. And yeah, I suppose it's just that getting around and noticing. I do an awful lot of noticing. I think it's one of those really useful kind of neurodiversity skill set things, isn't it? That you can be really good at noticing stuff. You can get really good at being caught up in the stuff that you notice. You can get really good at being sidetracked off whatever plan.
I don't relate to any of this. I don't know what you're talking about.
Can I just interrupt to say that when you were describing mudlarking, so I've only done a little bit of mudlarking, but like I feel like most of the time I'm in the woods, I am essentially mudlarking because I'm just like looking for stuff. Guys, look at it. While you were describing mudlarking, my mouth was actually watering. Isn't that weird? Salivating. Oh, lovely mudlarking, yes, please. Yeah, which I think it just ties into that.
Okay, can we tie in then? Okay, this is the one. I'm going to put together a little logo that just says spiritual mudlarking, and that's the new thing. That's what we're going for now. That's what we're doing.
Yes.
We're doing spiritual mudlarking.
Forest school. Yeah, like it looked like one of those dictionary definitions on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Forest school. Spiritual mudlarking.
Oh, I love it.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I also want to go back a bit to you were just describing facilitating moments of noticing, and whether that be that people are noticing the weeds coming out of the pavement. And I remembered it was you, wasn't it, that in lockdown went round and marked out.
That was chalked on the pavement. Yeah,
chalked on the pavement. And didn't you make the news chalking on the pavement? Do you want to, for listeners who don't know what we're on about, do you want to just explain?
So it was at that bit in early lockdown where you were allowed to leave your house for 1 hour a day for exercise, and I was missing my woods, and I was thinking, oh, I miss my woods, I miss my trees, this is rubbish. And then I thought, actually, I have got trees in the streets around my house. And so I was walking and looking at the trees, and I'm thinking, my tree ID is not that great. I should probably use this time for something useful and train myself better on trees. And so I was walking around trying to work out what they all were, and kind of looking at everybody else who was walking around kind of head in their own world. I thought what people need, they need to rather get so much introspection, wasn't there? And kind of looking in and kind of getting kind of caught up in this kind of whirlwind of grimness. And I thought what I really need people to do is I need people to look up and look out, because actually these things are carrying on. And it was that spring, wasn't it? And spring's still happening all around us. And so I got my chalk and I went out and I thought, well, I'm going to label the trees up, because maybe someone will see a label and it will make them notice the tree. And if they notice a tree, they'll kind of hopefully, well, who can fail to see a tree and not be overcome with joy and wonder, you know? Aren't they lovely beings to share our world with? And so I'd label the tree, and then I suppose I'd call it, it's kind of like theological reflection, but it's kind of like treeological reflection. So I'd be thinking about the tree and about stuff about the tree. I'd be looking up the tree, finding facts out about it on the internet, and then I'd see what kind of have a conversation between the tree and the fact about the tree and our experience that we were in, and then write a little tagline as well. So, for example, we've got a lot of Turkish hazel used as a street tree around here. When I was looking it up on the RHS website, it says Turkish hazel tolerates difficult conditions. And I thought, well, that's a useful thing for people to hear, because if you can't manage to thrive in them, you can at least tolerate them. Surely we can manage to tolerate. That's kind of aspirational, it felt. And so I'd write Turkish hazel tolerates difficult conditions and leave it there just under the trees. Just as a kind of, here's a thing to think about and reflect. And I think there wasn't much positive news at that point. The news was all awfulness. And I went out with my chalk and I thought, oh, maybe someone will take a photo. I wonder if anyone will take a photo and share it on any of my local Facebook groups. But someone took a photo and put it on Twitter, and I went to bed with 60 Twitter followers and woke up with 6,000. Wow. And the rest was history. And then I was on BBC and ITV News and The Guardian. And what my kids were really impressed by, I was in The Week Junior.
Hey, really? That's amazing.
I really was. Yeah.
That's so cool.
As outdoor leaders and educators, we often find ourselves entrusted with sensitive information about our students, their families, and our fellow staff. From emergency contact details to medical information, ensuring the confidentiality of this data is paramount. But in today's digital age, protecting this information extends beyond the physical realm and into the online world. That's where NordVPN comes in. NordVPN is a trusted name in online security, providing a virtual private network that encrypts your internet connection and shields your online activities from prying eyes. With NordVPN, you can browse the web, communicate with parents, and manage administrative tasks with peace of mind, knowing that your data is safe from hackers, snoopers, and other threats. But NordVPN isn't just about security. It also offers flexibility and convenience, allowing you to access geo-blocked content, connect to public Wi-Fi hotspots securely, and bypassing censorship restrictions. Whether you're researching lesson plans, communicating with colleagues, or simply unwinding with some online entertainment, NordVPN ensures that you can do so safely and privately. So, fellow outdoor enthusiasts, if you are ready to take your online security up to the next level, I urge you to sign up to NordVPN today by using the link in the show notes. You'll not only safeguard your sensitive data, but also support the continued exploration and enjoyment of the great outdoors through this podcast. Stay safe, stay secure, and let's keep the spirit of adventure alive, both in the forest and online. That's very exciting. When you were, so I have some. I'm going to wade into some slightly deeper water now, because there's obviously something about when you go out and like tree IDing is a really good example, I think, and I'm going to use it as a shoehorn to get into that idea that is like when one person's got knowledge, and then you're like trying to share that knowledge. One of the things that I find really I want to like navigate carefully is like sharing knowledge without, for me, creating like undue hierarchy.
Yes,
you know, that
or
thing of like
sledgehammering with them,
or sledgehammering, or like posturing in a way that is like, come to me for knowledge. And I don't know if you can get to where I'm going to anyway, but when we started this recording and you put your dog collar on, and there was something visceral that happened to me where I went, "Ooh, Rachel is now authoritative." in my head.
I could have told you to do anything.
It wouldn't have worked, right? Again, we're going to talk about wonky brain skills. The authority doesn't necessarily translate to obedience, but I'm interested to know how, or if you navigate that in any different way, because obviously you're wearing a thing that confers some like leadership, authority, status that might be different to, you know, Wem and I are wearing totally outdoor clothes that are like, I don't think, Wem, tell me if I'm wrong, that we wear anything. I wear the big badge that says I'm the best and you're all rubbish. But that's the...
Sometimes I worry that my clothes don't give enough authority because they are either too dirty, too full of holes, or too out of fashion. And I think, do I really look like I run this joint? People should actually like pay me to look after the children.
That's always my worry when new people come to the toddler group, is I immediately panic and go, am I wearing a logo anywhere? Because I just might...
who I am, or they just think I've turned up.
Yeah. But to circle back to my question, I just wanted to ask how you navigate that, or whether that's something that you take into consideration with the sessions. Like, you know, you're in a position of authority from multiple angles, I guess. You're like religious authority or guidance, or however you want to phrase it, but also you're leading an outdoor session. How do you approach those things?
So I suppose, first of all, you wearing the dog collar is quite weird type of authority, because it opens up people who maybe might feel a bit awkward talking about, I had a spiritual experience, like you were saying, when you don't go around saying it, but somehow there's something about wearing a collar that random people seem to think they can come up to me and talk to me about stuff that's really, really deep without any earlier conversation at all. Wow. Which is, I mean, what a gift to be able to have. So it's essentially why I wear it, really, just because it's a sign saying you can talk to me about that weird stuff and I'm not going to judge you. As far as everything else goes, I mean, I think it is just that kind of, it's that forest school leadership style thing, isn't it? Of where you're saying kind of, here's the stuff, I've got stuff in my back pocket, it's here if you want it. Kind of, here's some ideas I've had. What ideas have you had? What can we create together?
Yeah. While we're talking about clothes, I wanted to ask. I said I wanted to talk to you about clothes because I see you were sharing with a lot. You know, we've got the back stage forest school channels of communication, and you were on the
secret groups,
the secret groups
that we all have, and you listeners don't know about them.
Secret at all. No, lots of listeners will know. You were sharing your amazing creations of your amazing clothes, and you've got
my lovely stoles. Yes,
you've got like tell us about that.
What's a stole?
So what's a stole? Good first question. A stole looks like a scarf. So a stole is essentially, it's the priest's scarf. So if you imagine a priest on the telly, it's a scarf that they're wearing, not the black one, so that's a preaching scarf that you wear over the white floppy thing that you wear if you're on EastEnders and doing a funeral. The stole is the one that's coloured and showing you that you're there in a sacramental role. And more words here I need to unpack for you. So sacramental just means an outward sign of something that's inward and spiritual that you can't see. So that's what a sacrament is. So it's like showing through stuff, important stuff that's happening on the inside. So with baptism, for example, as a sacrament, there's the important stuff of being kind of made into a new baby Christian, being part of the family. And the thing you see is the splashy water and the rubby oil. Mm-hmm. So the stole is a sign that you're there in that particular role. And like I was saying earlier, before we got so rudely interrupted by my 11-year-old, the church, because of the way that it's grown across the globe, lots of the way that the church works and the church year works hangs off things that fit in the kind of year of nature. Within a kind of Western European context. So we have Christmas at Christmas because that's when it fits with the symbolism of light and the darkness. We have Easter at Easter because that's when it fits with the symbolism of new life. So lots and lots of the things happen when they happen because of what's happening out in the world. So because of this kind of cycle, yearly cycle of things, the church has kind of different colours that fit to kind of show where you are. So it's kind of colour coded. There's a nice quote by what's that name? He used to be in Mork and Mindy, the lovely actor guy.
Robin Williams.
Yeah,
Robin Williams. There's a lovely Robin Williams guy. He says why he was an Episcopalian. He says Episcopalian because the church year is colour coded. So it's colour coded. You always know where you are. So at the moment we're in Lent and I'm wearing purple, and you can look at me and see I'm wearing purple, and you know that we're in Lent. So I needed a bunch of different stoles for different times of year, different festivals or seasons that were happening in church. And you can buy them off the peg, but because I just really wanted them to have an integrity with who I was. And so I decided to try to make some of my own. So I've made 3. So I needed a white one for ordination when I got made deacon wearing a dog colour. And so I was thinking, kind of playing around with the ideas about kind of what it was that I was going to be called to do and to be. And as far as the Church of England's concerned, I'm ordained pioneer clergy, which means I do stuff outside of churches. And so I was thinking, well, silver birch would be good. It's white, but it's also pioneer species, isn't it? And also because of it being a really good fire starter. And in a way, I kind of see that's kind of a little bit what my role is with the church, but a bit of fire up them. And also I like starting stuff. I'm not a great kind of completer finisher. I'm definitely more of a kind of let's get this stuff starting and exciting new things going. So I printed off some birch bark fabric and then sewed on little golden birch leaves that I'd cut using real birch leaves as templates. And if you've ever tried sewing golden leather, it's really prickly. And if you've ever tried sewing golden leather while you've got a child who's on a short-term pupil referral unit placement, you can only get there by a really long bus journey, it's really prickly because you're trying to stab it on a wobbly top deck of a bus. So I don't know if I recommend that or not, but it happens and it is a thing. And I can look at the birch leaves and I can remember them with my fingers, you know.
Yeah. Wow.
So I have that one. I have a green one that I made for Trinity, ordinary season, Trinity season. Green for growth is what it is in the church. And so I thought, well, I'll have green for growth. And I've got dandelions on it because, again, another kind of pioneer symbol of them kind of spreading out all over the place. Little ideas spreading around, and they drop down the floor. You don't quite know what they're going to do. And you can't control control where they grow, what they grow into, and that kind of setting stuff off around the place, and it not being kind of, I'm not having to micromanage it. It's just itself. I think I like that.
Yeah. And they're so beautiful. They look really stunning.
Yeah, thank you. They were fun to make.
Yeah, I saw you asking about how to set Hapazomi. Was that for the souls? Is that for...
Yeah, so I want to do a purple one. I want to do a purple one with violets on the bottom. I'm not quite sure how to do it.
Yeah, because the colours change over time so much as well, don't they? Even if they stay in fabric.
Fade so quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Lily came up with a bunch of other things I could use. I was going, but I want the violets because I need it to be violet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Amazing.
Rachel, I was going to ask, when you minister and deliver sessions in two different settings. You're talking about having the indoor setting and the outdoor setting, and that you were saying that they're somewhat separate if you're in one place and in the other place. Have you had any participants move from one to the other or back, or, you know, do people go, actually, this is where I'm comfortable? You know, what's that relationship like? Do people move backwards and forwards?
I think people move to get what they need out of different places. So through Advent, I did a weekly evening session around the fire pit, and I was doing kind of the story of salvation, so Old Testament stories. I was not reading them, I was retelling them, storytelling style, because obviously so many old stories, they weren't written in a book. So everything goes through an oral storytelling form. So I was telling a story, and then just we'd sit around the fire and chat about it and toast some bread and fruit bread and butter it and whatever. And a lot of the people from that were people, kind of, some of them from the church who are normally on the inside, and some people from Forest School in the mornings, and some people were random other people who just thought it might be fun.
And when you are reaching out and, like, you've got these community stuffs going on, how oh god, I'm really interested in how much I am tiptoeing here. I know lots of forest schools, they feel very motivated to include ceremonies from different faiths and different cultures in their setting. Is that something that you also do in your setting, or is it like, this is a space for these types of ceremonies? You know,
I've never been a very ceremonial forest schooler, I suppose.
Okay.
So it always feels a little bit like I don't want to be pushing too much of myself and my decisions and structuring the sessions. It feels a little bit structury, and it makes me feel a bit twitchy, I suppose. So everything I do tends to be quite invitational. So my sessions that I was running on a Friday morning, I'd probably, if there was something that people in the group might be interested in, I would probably offer it as I wondered if we might do this kind of a way. And that wouldn't necessarily be from the Christian tradition. It could be from whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Has that come up, or not, that you can really put a finger on?
I don't think it's come up in any way that I've been disturbed by it, but I'm trying to think back of what I've done. Did we do any other? Did we do other faith things? Probably.
And it depends what comes up, doesn't it? Because sometimes you're not thinking about that, but it ends up coming up in discussion, or it reminds somebody of something. We've had that with not just necessarily religious things, but about cultural things, where someone's gone, that's reminded us of something that we do in my parents' home country, or that's kind of or we've been cooking this recently. I wonder if that would work over the fire, and all of those kind of actually organic, as you say. It's not you go, not you, us as leaders going, I've planned this session, it's all themed about this because I should, because there's
woodpecker. No, we won't look at the woodpecker, children. We're all going to do this activity.
Exactly. Or, the calendar says this, so we're all going to make bonfire night firework pictures now. It's like as you say, it can be an invitation, or it can be something that is organic, that comes from the group. And I think that is, probably the way to go.
What I'm interested in is people, and I like people, and I like how people tick, and I like all the things that go up kind of come together to make them the people that they are. And I suppose that's spirituality is a part of that. And I don't think with a collar on that precurses me to say I'm not going to talk about any spirituality that doesn't rigidly fit in with a particular faith structure.
Yeah, that's well put. Yeah.
Hey, outdoor leaders, are you familiar with that feeling of spending the whole day holding other people's needs, trying to keep spirits up by cooking treats over the fire, only to get home and be faced with yet more mental load and cooking chores? We get it, it's exhausting. But what if we told you there's a game changer that could make your evenings a whole lot easier? Enter HelloFresh, the household name in meal kit delivery. You've probably heard of them, but have you given them a try? If not, now's the perfect time to experience the convenience and deliciousness that they bring to the table. And guess what? As a thank you for supporting our show, HelloFresh is offering our listeners an incredible deal. Just follow the link in our podcast show notes to enjoy a fantastic 60% off your first box, plus 25% off for the next 2 months, along with some free gifts. Imagine coming home to a box full of fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes, ready to help you whip up tasty meals without the stress. It's like having a personal sous chef right in your kitchen. So why not give yourself a break and let HelloFresh do the heavy listening? Click on that link in the show notes and treat yourself to some well-deserved relaxation. Thank you again to HelloFresh for supporting outdoor leaders like us. Yeah. Rachel, I'm very conscious of how much of your time you're giving us. Thank you very much. Is there anything that we have forgotten to ask you? I need to tell you about this thing. Is there a thing that we've missed, or anything you're can I tell you about this thing that's coming up?
I suppose what I would like to say is I often don't. Yeah, I think you're the first Forest School people I've talked to. I do an awful lot of talking to churches about Forest School. Often it's that way round. And so often I'm saying to churches, you have land and you have access to communities and you have people. This is such an easy win that does something really important for the world. I embrace it, run with it, get some people outside. And I say that an awful lot. So I suppose, conversely, I suppose I'd say don't be afraid to approach faith groups, because some of them might be terrifying, but some might be quite nice, and they might jump at it, jump at the chance to allow you to use some space. Here's hoping. Hopefully the ones who can listen to me ranting at them might jump at it.
Yeah, we went to a really lovely site, didn't we?
Nurturing a... Is it? No. What's it called? It's in Epping Forest,
Kin.
I think.
Yes.
Kinship in Nature.
Yes.
And they're on the back of a Quaker site.
Yeah. And it's beautiful. It's such a lovely little oasis of woodland, in an urban area, which is, as you say, with the land, like you describe your setting, it's they're a real jewel, aren't they, in that kind of environment? And so to open those spaces up.
Churches, and I think churches sometimes worry that they don't have enough, or it's not like beautiful woodland, so why would people want it? And I just keep saying to them, all the connection we can get with nature is good, and it doesn't have to be big or beautiful or full of trees. It can literally be small spaces. It's actually with little children, tiny spaces are still gigantic wilderness, aren't they?
Is there anything that needs to be done? One of the things that I'm always conscious of with depending on different outdoor spaces, they infer to adults, I'm thinking toddler groups now. You go to different outdoor spaces, and if you go to a National Trust type, very manicured kind of site, there is that kind of inferred expectation of you need to stay on the paths, you need to come over here. And then I think sometimes faith sites can feel a bit like that, or they've got almost a library-ish energy to them, which is people might say people, I'm not putting my own views on this. I worry that I or my children are about to put our foot on the wrong thing or step in the wrong place. And so I guess there can be... Is there something to be done there about demystifying the sites or welcoming people in?
I mean, I think as ever, it's probably to do with humans having relationship and some kind of dialogue and talking about it. So there are lots of churches who are involved in eco-church movements. So they are trying to kind of build up their space as being kind of a biodiverse haven, rather than being beautifully rigidly kept. So I think there is movement on that side. I mean, as far as mine's concerned, it's taken a bit of a kind of thinking on my part to use it for forest school, because it's different using a churchyard from using the woodland. For one thing, kind of I'm surrounded by the woods, but I'm not inside the woods to quite the same extent. And also, I do have to be careful where I tell them to dig up for mud pies, because I don't ending up with toe bones.
See, I was really dancing around that, going, I'm not going to be rude. I don't want to go like, how much grave digging do you do on a day? And I was really careful.
I think it's quite interesting. It is quite interesting working in a place which is surrounded by a lot of dead people.
Okay, great, because I'm so interested in this. I'm so glad we can talk about this now.
People can be a little bit nervous about it, because we don't have a lot of contact with death in modern society, do we? It all happens behind closed doors, mostly in a hospital, and we don't ever talk about it ever again, because it's something we're all quite terrified of and don't want to talk about. But I think it's really quite lovely having tiny children running over graves and playing among where dead people were. I think it's quite lovely when they say, what are these? And their parents aren't quite knowing what to do, and I say, oh, that's where some people were buried when they were dead. And their parents go, oh gosh, they shouldn't be there. And I say, well, I can't imagine if I was dead what I'd like better than children running around over my body. It'd be lovely, wouldn't it? How idyllic would that be, to have your dead body in a peaceful green setting surrounded by giggling children finding worms or something? It'd be so nice.
Yeah. I was absolutely obsessed with graves when I was a kid. That was like one of my favourite pastimes, was to go to a cemetery and read all of the names and look at the style of the writing and see how old they were, and try and, ask questions about who they might have been and imagine what their lives might have been like. I blooming loved it. And all of the stuff like on the graves, I was like, so the people that knew these people have left these things, and why have they chosen to leave that? And what, all those little human stories.
And there's codes as well, isn't there? Like when you go around and it's like, a square one means this, and a bird on the stone means this.
Like Victorian symbolism sort of thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the amazing
roses means they were engaged but didn't get married, and daffodil, like tulips mean this and something else. There's like there is a thing, isn't there? I think
Victoria. I think. In there,
sounds like you read a Ladybird guide or one of those Michelin spotters guides to graves. That's what you need.
Yeah. What's the Abney Park? I used to live near Abney Park Cemetery, and which is amazing. Like, what an amazing place. And a lot of those graves have amazing statuary on them that is obviously very symbolic to Victorian people that built them at the time. I was also reading something fairly recently about how churchyards have been used differently through history, and it was saying, certainly in Devon, I'm not sure if it's true all over the UK, but that graveyards would have been places where the community would have used almost like a village green. That, headstones wouldn't have been made out of stone, and most poor people wouldn't have had any gravestones at all, actually. So just lots of people buried, not really any markers, and you use that as a place to congregate and to dance.
It's a settled community as well, which we kind of don't really hear. And it was only when I moved to this church, which actually has a graveyard, where we haven't been, where we've been before, they haven't. I think it must be, I don't know, not exactly strange, but how interesting to have a community like those in the past, where kind of it was people you loved that you're dancing by, kind of almost with them in a way.
Yeah.
Kind of their memories are still with you, aren't they? If you're dancing by their graves, then they're kind of still with you and joining in with your celebrations. And even if it's your children who didn't know them, you'd say, oh yeah, this is where we buried Auntie Gladys, and I loved Auntie Gladys because she always made me the best hot chocolate or something. But it kind of somehow, I suppose it's like that thing, I love hanging out with trees just because of the lifespan being longer than mine. It's the same kind of thing, isn't it? I think it can make us feel, ironically a bit panicky within a human lifespan sometimes, almost claustrophobic, can't it?
It's quite final, isn't it? The idea that it's like that's where you go and then nothing happens to that land, as opposed to like you go in there and then that soil is probably going to be in the root system of that tree or like that flower bed, and like you can see
there's an awful lot of three-cornered leek that we end up eating as well, and I'm sure that three-cornered leek has been growing out of certain juicy things inside the soil.
So fucking goth.
Great, isn't it?
I love it. It reminds me of all that stuff about Neolithic people and literally in lots of burial sites around the UK, the bones that have been placed there are all jumbled up, and they've realised the reason they're jumbled up is because they used to get them out all the time to party with their ancestors. So through the year, it's just like, get granddad out, get great granddad out, and and party with us for the ceremony. So they're there, and then we just chuck the bones back, and it doesn't really matter what order they're in because that is the ancestors, and we honour them by getting them out, which seems so kind of gruesome to us now. Maybe
it's very interesting. I mean, the thing I hadn't quite figured on about getting collared up is how much death stuff I do, and so kind of the world of funerals figures quite large in the world of clergy. You do an awful lot of funerals, and I don't know if you're aware, but funerals are slightly on the decline because people will go to straight cremation. So the person will die, and then they'll go to straight cremation, and then at some point in the future, people might have a party or remembrance or something. And the kind of issues with that people are finding that you kind of need to have something that says, yes, this person's dead before you're able to move on. And kind of how you do that within kind of ritual and sign and symbol that allows people to move forwards in grief. I think that's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's reminded me actually. That's made me think. I don't know that I hadn't engaged with it. I think at least two of my grandparents are in forest burial sites where they've got a tree on them, but they're not forests because it's still set up like a graveyard. It's still regimented rows, and I can remember going to see where one of my grandparents was going to be, and going to see this like 3 foot by 3 foot square on the ground, and the next bit, and they were saying you could choose any of, it was like 30 different species of tree to go with there, and I ended up choosing an apple tree because it was cheap, and they said that's what my granddad would have wanted. That was just his vibe, was like, that's cheap, have that one. But I remember being hit because I wasn't really far into my forest school journey, but I remember being hit of like, this is super unnatural as an ecosystem. This is not a community space or a forest or a like, you're not the idea that it was like a silver birch, and then the next 3 foot an apple tree, and then the next 3 foot a jasmine, and then the next three, like, I was like, there's something. I was just reflecting on it now. There's like an interesting, like, performative thing of like, this is a very natural thing to do, but actually, I looked at it and was like, well, this is. I wanted to see their woodland management plan because this is absolutely like insane. That's. Do you know what? I'm so glad we got onto that.
No, you were itching. You were itching to talk about.
Talking about dead
itching
people.
To talk about. I was really worried about it, which again comes down back to that thing of like, this authority and expectations.
But people care about it very much, don't they? The village where I live, we have a churchyard. We don't have a church anymore because it wasn't structurally sound. So the community fundraised for years and years to try and get it fixed, but then it would break again and it wasn't safe. So the council just said we can't afford it anymore, and they really sadly bulldozed it in the 90s. Lots of people are still very upset about it, but the ground is still used by the community, so there'll be services maybe 3 or 4 times a year, and sometimes there are baptisms and weddings there occasionally, and the people that run it have decided to take very natural management style of the land, and amazingly, just naturally, it is an amazing habitat for wildflowers. So we've just got the native daffodils coming through there at the moment, and the species of wildflower are incredible. Somebody gave me in the village about 10 years ago. They went round and listed all of the wildflower species, and it's on this really long ream of paper. And as time goes on, people managing it have learned more about when it's best to cut the meadow, as it actually is now, really, and when best to leave it, and all these kind of things. But it really got into a huge public debate locally, and I got kind of dragged into it because people thought it was my fault. Actually, it's nothing to do with me at all, but they knew me as the forest school lady
with the forest
school van outside my house. It's all that woman's fault, because people became very upset that some people, just the idea of it upset them, that it looked untidy, that it wasn't managed, that it didn't show respect. They think
somehow that means it's not being looked after, don't they?
Yes, and it's not respectful, and what would the people have wanted, and what is it? It's showing a sign to our ancestors and our relatives that we don't care, or and other people genuinely said it was an access problem, that they were trying to get to their family grave and they found that very difficult. And so it's all about, making sure that the paths are really accessible, and then managing it for people and for wildlife at the same time. But it became a very emotional argument, and I didn't really know what to say, because I sort of wanted to say it's nothing to do with me, actually.
Well, and that is the crux of what we were talking about right at the start of this, weren't we, where we were saying that talking and engaging with spiritual moments is a very risky and raw place to go. And then working on a churchyard site or delivering, that is the perfect intersection of those two things, of like, here is a nature thing, here is a spiritual thing. How do we manage a site for both of them, Oh, immense. Rachel, if people are in the Epping area and they want to come and find out more about what you did, you said the name of your church and where you're located, but where can people go to find out more about what you're doing? How can we get you more Twitter followers? That's what we're here for.
So I am at Curious Wilds on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. That's my kind of forest school hat on. And then St. Peter in the Forest is a church that is also on Instagram. I think it does have a Twitter handle, but I don't have the login for that. So I at them, but I don't actually do anything to them.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you so much. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you, Rachel. Thank you for your
lovely
time.
One more death fact for you, Lewis. You'll like this one, right? You know how you may not know, when people are buried, they're buried with their feet to the east. I think that's the way round it goes. So people are all buried in the same direction.
Oh no, the internet.
So that when they stand up, they'll be facing.
Can you go back a bit, Rachel?
Hang on.
Hold on.
Hang on.
Your
internet. Go back.
Your internet cut out. It cut out the point where you said when people are buried.
When people are buried, they're all buried on the same orientation. They're all buried east-west, so that when they rise from the dead, they'll be facing the east, facing the rising sun.
So your feet are pointing east.
Yeah, so your feet are pointing east. Apart from if you're clergy and you're buried the other way round.
Why?
It's really interesting.
So that when I rise from the dead, I'll be facing the other direction so I can look after everyone.
Oh my gosh.
I was imagining you at the back of the group facing the wrong way, but you're saying you're at the front of the group and everybody's looking at you.
I am.
Yeah.
The massive crowds of all these buried people who will suddenly come up from their graves, I'm facing the other direction. And there's a Johnny Flynn song he sings a lot about burial and death, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But the end of one of his songs, he sings about how you're buried, feet to the east, head to the west. And I always say at the end of it, I'm going to say in my car, not me, Johnny.
Oh my gosh. There is a grave.
Does the headstone go at the other side?
That's what I was going to say.
So, yeah.
Because there's a grave like that in my village churchyard, but it doesn't say that it's a lady, and it doesn't say.
Okay, I'm so sorry. I have a really logistical question now. If you are buried in we should have ended this episode so long ago. I'm just in it now. So
you're just trying to trim it.
Like shared family ones where you're like in a neighbouring plot. So could you end up next to your partner's feet until that date happens?
Feet for Tandy. Luckily, he's ordained as well, so we don't have to smell each other's feet.
Was that the reason that you both got
that's
ordained?
the only reason I got ordained.
Amazing. Right, I'm going to end on that one. Thank you, Rachel. We'll see you again soon, mate.
Thank you. That was lovely.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.